be entering an area of business strategy by the vehicle of technology adoption and how to get people to adopt your product or service for that matter. So what I'm going to do in this will probably only be about 15, 20 minutes long, maybe more, is start looking at how people adopt your product or service. I'm going to keep it nice and simple too. Starting with solutions. Some people are more solution oriented. For example, you may have a piece of technology and what it does for you means more. The solution that it does for you means more than the phone itself. Dealing with smartphones, for example. People often think that they're buying products. Sometimes they don't buy products, sometimes they buy status. But people do want a particular experience. They want an outcome. Not always features. The features really should take them to an outcome. So you might buy a smartphone with a special feature in it that would allow you to maybe become a vlogger more efficiently, that sort of way. So when people make purchases, they usually make the purchase in an attempt to solve some kind of problem. Now, some people will just do it emotionally. They won't solve the problem. It'll be an impulse buy, which sometimes it'll be a return. They'll have to return that, which happens a lot. I've seen a ton of people buy things on impulse and then 24 hours return it over and over again. It happens. But every purchase, everything a person buys or service they engage in is literally an act of trust between you and the company. If you're uncomfortable or you don't feel certain on the inside about that organization, that will become a barrier to adopting the product or service. This happens right now. Tesla's a fine example. Okay, Apple's another one. As another different example, of course, but it's there. When you trust the face of the organization, that's not just the brand, but also the person. When you like what they stand for, you're more likely to gravitate in that area. But transparency is important. Transparency, when you're a company and you have a product or service and you're transparent with your customers, when you're transparent with that, they're more likely to trust you. Problem with artificial intelligence nowadays is that people are throwing information in and they don't feel that the technology is transparent enough with what they're doing. So therefore, they don't trust a system based on that. And that's why some people do, and that's why some people don't. If I had to split the world down the middle, I would say about 60-40. Now, transparency is what builds your connection. When you're transparent about your product or service, you build that connection with other people. It builds trust a whole lot faster than you trying to sell them and persuade them. That's why some people don't have to sell. They don't have to sell. I have a product. Here it is. This is what it does. We're confident what it does. And you'll get an outcome from it if you do. So when we're dealing with strategies in regards to products and services, transparency is what is needed. Transparency is the most important thing because that builds trust faster. That's one of the major reasons why AI is not fully trusted by a lot of people. It's because they don't feel there's enough transparency. And that's fine. It's the nature of things. But that goes for any product. Any product or service or system or software, transparency is important. When you buy into something, you want to know what you're getting yourself into. Really simple. When a company has hidden information and then they're not very forthcoming about their identity of who they are as well as what they do, that totally destroys trust with their customers. Totally destroys trust. And when things are not transparent, when you're not transparent with your product or service, and you're not clear with your branding message, the message you're trying to convey, it'll create confusion. Confusion will hurt adoption. The whole point is they're trying to adopt your service, trying to adopt your product. And if there is confusion around that, they won't do it. If there's no transparency around that, they won't do it. Demonstration is proof. Demonstration. That's why if you go to like a Costco and they got some food out and they say, here, try one of these, they're more likely to buy that brand. They're like, oh, this is pretty good. I mean, it's hit or miss for some people, but taste can make them buy the box on the spot. Like, wow, that's really good. You know, it's delicious. Proof beats promises. And, you know, I remember going to certain stores. I think it was Stu Leonard's, the brand Stu Leonard's, where, you know, moving throughout the entire store, you're always tasting something as you go. And not realizing that it's this journey of food, and you're more likely to buy some of these items as a result of tasting it. So it's pretty interesting how different brands will do different things like that. Proof beats the promise. If you're looking for a strategy behind your brand, behind your service, behind your product, your message has to be really tight, has to be clear. If your website has too many competing designs, page 1 is totally looking different than page 4, that alone sends a signal that there's no consistency. So that brings us over to the next point, is that consistency is also part of that transparency. So as a brand, you have to be consistent. Let's talk about human behavior, and I'll just revert back to business. When people do what they say, it shows their character and it shows consistency. Consistency is what builds trust. If there's incongruous behaviors, what they say and what they do doesn't match, and they see that, they're less likely to trust that person. You might get a one-off person that gives the benefit of the doubt, but more often than not, what they say and what they do should match. So with a brand, it should be the same thing. Is that you have a product that does what you say it's going to do. And when you have a customer who has an amazing experience, the customer narratives and stories sell like hotcakes. And it's more powerful than advertisement. More powerful. You know, if you look at your average commercial, we look at, let's say, Burger King on TV. When you watch it and you got the dripping cheese and the sizzling sound, all of that is sensory experience. It's trying to use your senses to be like, honey, let's go. We're going to Burger King right now. Or can we have it DoorDashed here? You know, the melting cheese, the sizzling, it's all there to just get your mind so engaged into it. Right? It's no wonder why diets are so hard. There's no wonder why, right? If we treated workouts like we treated hamburger commercials, people would work out more. Hopefully. That's the hope anyway. So the independent reviews, when you get reviews from customers, they add up and they become really valuable. And people get to see, oh, wow, I see what you have here. I see what you did, you know. It's like a resume. You know, having a resume is proof, and that beats promises. But people also want to see what you can do and want to be able to kind of say, all right, well, I'll hire you. I'm holding you to this. I'm holding you to this promise. So a lot of the reviews that you get from people, they have a lot of weight, more than the company's claims, more than the claim that the company actually has, believe it or not. So we have to look at that. People do trust people more than brands. That's one of the reasons why, like when Steve Jobs was alive, people saw him as the face of the brand, an extension of that. So they were more likely to trust Apple at that time. And that's an interesting factor, is that people are supposed to trust the brand itself, but sometimes they trust the face behind the brand. Now, that brings us over to like a founder or a CEO. The reputation literally becomes the face. Their face behind the brand becomes part of the reputation of the company. That's why everybody was like, a product launch? What's Apple doing now? And Steve was like, yeah, we got something up our sleeve coming. So when you look at the authentic nature of branding and a business and a service or product, it's real simple. Authenticity it's nothing magical. It's that what they say they're going to do matches what they do. That's the authenticity. Literally, that it's authentic. It's them. That when you buy a certain brand, it has a label on it, and that label is authentic. There's a certificate that comes, like I've seen watches come with actual certificates stating that this is part of the brand, and that's to get away with fraud, because some of those brands are really high. They're expensive luxury items, for example. That's where it gets really wild and interesting. So the personal brand becomes the bridge. So Steve Jobs and his face becomes the bridge to the actual brand itself. That's my example. Then what happens is, when you start to build a community with your brand, that's where you start to expand, because a community can build confidence. But you also have to be able to have boundaries as well. You have to have boundaries in that area, because you're going to have people that will gripe legitimately. They'll have a legitimate product gripe. And then there's people that will have a fake gripe to get money. All right. Let me give you an example. Like, we'll say DoorDash right now. DoorDash, you have to take a picture of what you're dropping off. And some people could take that photo, load it into AI, make it look like the food is still there, and say, here, the food is delivered, when in actuality, the food was eaten. Someone ate it. So people could use that to fraud, to go down that road. But the communities, when you start connecting with as many people as you can, connect, convey, and understand. You have two choices: connect, convey, convince, if you're doing sales. Connect, convey, understand, if you're just trying to get to know your customers. Real simple. Because you want to become reliable. You become reliable through transparency and consistency. That's what proves you're reliable. And if you're a reliable brand, people will come back to you. That's what happens. There's an old saying, and it's so true. It's like incredibly true. Over promise, or no, over deliver, under promise and over deliver. That's how it goes. Under promise and over deliver. That the promise is where it should be, but the delivery is outstanding. And that's something I learned consulting in the graphic arts world back in 2001. Doing a lot of consulting. I was always big on, when I delivered the final product, I made sure that it knocked their socks off. And one way to do that was really getting to know what the client wanted, getting granular about it. And what I would do is have them send 7 examples of what they're looking for, and try to combine all those samples together and move in that direction. But if you overpromise, if you promise too much, that destroys trust. It destroys trust. So under-promising and over-delivering, that creates your community, that creates advocates. People are like, I like that brand, man. I'm down with that. I'm following them. They just gave me a whole bunch of free stuff on top of what I got, So there's always that. That's a customer journey. Customer journey is a different concept. It's from start to finish, the moment you enter a building to the moment you leave. You'd be surprised what happens when you walk into a restaurant that's like 4-star and you hit the bathroom and you're like, oh boy, all right, my experience is ruined. And yeah, there are some people who say, all right, let's go. We're not eating here. I've seen that happen before. Not from me, but from other people. But every extra step, and that comes down to steps and customer journey. There's a customer journey online, there's customer journey in store. Customer journey online, if there's too many steps, they will drop you like a hot potato. Because any point of, like, nowadays, people are overthinking a lot. Not everybody's overthinking, but if your steps are too many, you could be overthinking it. So if you have a checkout system on your website and there's way too many steps, they might start to overthink and be like, you know what? This is too much work. Let me close the window and forget it. And there are people that do that when there's like all kinds of paywalls and barriers. There's people that put stuff in their cart and then drop that shopping cart like a hot potato when they realize there's 7 more steps to go. And it's like, I'm done. Sorry, that was a horrible experience. You know, it's too hard. It comes from that book back in 2001 called Don't Make Me Think, which was a web developer's book. Part of me doing dev back then was don't make me think. I'm the user. I'm visiting the website. Don't make me think. It should be easy. It should be straightforward. You know, look at Amazon, the one-click button. One click, boom, done. You're good at that point. So when you have a fast checkout system and you don't make people think, that creates a lot of wins. People are going to come back and shop more and do more. So when we look at every step, if every step is frustrating, you're losing your customers. You are scaring them off. It's easy to start. It's easy to start. And when you make it easy to start and finish, then people will just go through the process. If it's easy to start and not finish, they will drop you. And whatever product they were thinking of buying will leave you. Like, I remember there was one website I went to and I put something in the shopping cart and you had to sign up first. And for 4 days, it kept annoying me, saying, hey, we noticed you left something in your shopping cart. It kept annoying me for 4 days. And eventually, you know what I did? Like, I was so frustrated at how incessant that really was. As because I went back and removed it from my cart and deleted the account because it kept being so incessant with that. There could have been another pathway. Okay, you know, and again, I can't speak for the rest of the customers out there, but that was my experience. I was like, you know, not doing this. Sorry. But when we have easy steps is good. But when you have a business that's maybe more service driven, you know, we'll go away from buying a product online, but let's say a service. It's good to have an onboarding, you know, where you onboard them. So anytime there's a software as a service and you appoint one person to onboard other people, they'll have a Zoom meeting and say, let me set you up with your expectation. Let me make this easy for you. I'm going to demo what you're going to do. I'm going to take you through it. And if you need anything, I'm here. I'm going to support you. That's good, solid onboarding, to be able to onboard. I remember during my time at Apple, I was working for Apple Corporate. It was in the pandemic. I had to onboard 200 people overnight, fast. That was train all of them. Because the stores were dropping like flies. They were all shutting down left and right. So they had to take the people that were working in the stores and put them, you know, online to work because everybody had COVID. So it was my job to onboard as many people as I could. So I had to develop a system that onboarded every person. And I onboarded everybody. And you know what? I still made connections to these days, to this day, people that I'm still friends with, you know. It's amazing. But onboarding should have been smooth. People were already high stressed at that time, you know, to onboard. We were onboarding for work, so it was a little bit different. But you onboard for a product, you onboard for a service. You got to make it smooth, quick, clean, straightforward. It's got to be nice. And you got to be careful too, because a lot of people want to use tech language, tech jargon. Like, I work in technology. I've been in tech since, you know, I've been using technology since 1976, but I've been in the technology field since roughly around Started with technology in 1960. No, wait, 1996. Sorry, not 60. I don't want to date my age. So I started using technology in 76. I started working in the field in the late 90s. And then into 2001, 2000, I went hardcore. I went absolutely hardcore with that. So, like, I was there at the dawn of that internet when Yahoo can barely hold a graphic, which makes you laugh. Now, emotions, people do buy emotionally. Yeah, that is very true. They do. There are people that buy with logic, and the people that buy with logic buy with numbers. Everything is a number. Number. How much this is going to cost me? Number. And they'll sit there. If someone tries to sell them, they'll try to debase the sale with logic. No, I'm really not getting that. So what if I'm getting this? So what if I'm getting that? So they hit it with the numbers. But on the emotional side, it's like if you get their emotions really excited, they'll turn around and they'll just buy. But we want to get them to buy, but from a place of trust, not from a place of distrust. Transparency. So logic supports their decision. When they see the numbers, they see the math, logic's like, all right, I'm going in that direction. Where emotion starts that decision. It gets them excited about it. That's what happens, and it's valuable. When there's pricing communicates the value, but you also have something called feature and a benefit. Okay? A feature and then the benefit. So benefits and outcomes, you could say. So when you communicate the price and then you say that the benefit of that price is this is what happens. The price is I'm going to fix your sink, and the benefit is I'm going to gut out the old pipes that are no good. Even though those aren't the ones that are broken, I'm going to fix the broken one, charge you only for that. But I'm going to give you all these free extra pipes as a bonus to gut all the bad rusty pipes out. You have a way to do that, to make them happy and do that. You just go. That's what I said. You can under promise, over deliver. So you have to be honest with your pricing because that increases confidence. If the price keeps changing every week, you will piss people off. Think about how many how many companies out there, retail organizations, how quick, how angry people get when the price is switched. There might be an advertisement in the paper. You go to a retail outlet, you go to buy it and say, oh, that was yesterday, the price has changed. And it's like, well, do you honor this? And then you got to look at the state laws. Like, what does the state law say about that? It just gets to be a crazy situation, but it happens. It happens a lot. So honest pricing increases confidence. When you have a sale, I believe having a deadline to that sale. It's good until this date. Offers last until this date. You hear that little aspect in there to keep everybody honest with that. Because every interaction will shape your brand. It will shape and form your company. Every interaction will do that. So very important with that. You are creating that customer confidence, and that honesty makes you credible. If you hide any information, that creates suspicion, puts people in the other way. People are trying to adopt your product or adopt your service, and transparency is important with that, having that transparency. Because that transparency, consistency is the first level of trust. First level. And if you keep getting people to fail their steps that they go through, it's going to be a problem. When you think of a brand, you have to think about the message you want to convey to your customer, and that has to be clear. Because if you're not clear with your message, it messes around with how you're recognized. It messes around with your trust. It messes around with your transparency. It messes around with how the customers see you. That's important. But yes, people do buy according to status. People do buy according to wanting to belong. My friend has an iPhone, therefore I'm going to buy an iPhone. You know, they do that, right? Sometimes they buy by habit, or habits create loyalty. Also, the sunk cost fallacy. I mean, sunk cost fallacy happens in video games all the time. Sunk cost. Let me drop $5,000 of money into this video game, and now I can't leave it. Why? Because I spent 5,000. I have all these weapons. I have all these different things. I can't leave this game anymore. So it becomes a sunk cost fallacy. When you get a solid customer, they become your advocate. They advocate for your brand. They advocate for who you are. And that's earned through your experience with them, your honesty with them. Be real. Like, be upfront. Be upfront with them. Listening, even to the crappy feedback, improves your product. Let me give you an example. Akio Morita, okay, the Japanese leader of Sony. He released this tape recorder. Back in the day, I think it was like $35. You can actually catch the mini documentary on my channel that I created about it. He created this tape recorder, him and his partner, and they put it out there for like $35. $35. And people are like, okay, what's this for? It's just to record myself? I'm not playing anything here? Like, what's going on? And a lot of people couldn't understand why they were buying it and all that. And there was this one famous musician and music conductor who bought it. And he had tons of things to actually say about it. And Akio said, all right, listen, I need to hear everything you got to say, all the negatives. Tell me everything negative. And then, you know, this conductor went to him and said, this is the deal. This is all that's wrong with it. And Akio just sat there with a pen and paper. He took down all the bad data. They remodeled that thing. They redid it. They even asked him to partake in the experience, you know, and they used that negative feedback to improve the product, put it out on the market, and sell like hotcakes. So you need to listen to negative feedback. You just have to understand that when you're dealing with feedback, there's specific feedback and general feedback. Okay? Specific in general, positive, negative. So positive, general, positive, specific. Positive, general, like, it's pretty good. It's general. I like it. It's good. Positive, specific. So, that feature really allowed me to change my life and do something with my family that I wasn't able to do before. Very specific. So you have positive, general, positive, specific, negative, general, negative, specific. So when you're looking at feedback that you receive, looking at that feedback, you have to put it in one of those categories, because some people are just going to trash you. And you have to see if there's value in the trash. You know how they say in one person's trash is another person's treasure. That's true when it comes to feedback, because when you get granular and you realize, okay, this is feedback that's useless, this is just a negative complaint, can we act on this complaint to make them happy? And if we can't, what else can we do? But when we're developing the product and the service, how can we use the feedback to develop things to move forward? That's important. So your people that test your products become your advocates. And they feel special when they're part of a program that they're helping you build something beautiful. It's amazing like that. Innovation is not enough by itself. Being able to get that feedback allows you to innovate. And most people are too afraid nowadays to look at the negative feedback unless you develop that thick skin. Very important. If people cannot understand your product, they cannot adopt it. If people cannot afford it, they cannot adopt it. If people cannot find it and it's not easy and it steps there, they cannot adopt it. That's all I'm going to say for today. I hope you enjoyed today's Business Strategy Lab. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment below. No big deal. I run these every day roughly around the same time. It's 2:30 Eastern time. But I have my schedule for live stream for every week. And I have mornings and afternoons. So I usually do about 9 a.m. Eastern, except for Thursday. Thursday's more later. And, then we have mostly mornings. So mostly mornings and then afternoons. So I do like around 8, 9 o'clock and then around 1, 2 o'clock. All right. Have a great day.